What's going on, Covenant Love? Welcome to week 2 of this generation, where we are talking about some topics that we think are super important as we address winning this generation, or Gen Z, for Jesus and seeing them know the Lord. And honestly, last week, we just talked through some stuff that we think that as a church we need to readdress, we need to relook at, we need to revisit and talk about those things, talk about the ways that we've failed, talk about the ways that we can do better. And last week we talked specifically about sex and purity culture. And this week, we want to kind of further that conversation by diving into and talking about sexuality. So this generation, whether you're aware of it or not, whether you're trying to stop it or not, whatever, this generation is so fluid with their sexuality. We live with a generation full of people that are encouraged to be fluid with their sexuality. They're encouraged to try new things and explore, like, well, what it would be like if I had sex with a man, or what it would be like if I had sex with this person. What about, and we're encouraged, this generation is encouraged to explore those things. And again, kind of like what we talked about last week, we can't be afraid of these conversations. The last thing that the church needs to do is run from conversations about sexuality. The last thing we need to do is run from conversations about sex and these hard things. And so even be willing to admit areas where it's like, look, we don't know. We don't have a firm theology on this. We don't have a firm understanding of this. And so as we talk about sexuality and what sexuality looks like for this generation, what's the starting place? Like, where do we start with such a major conversation like this? Because for me, I think
that's a big question.
That is a big question.
That's where you want to start.
That's where I want to start.
I was going to start talking.
Yeah. Well, that's what we go do. So because for me, whenever I look at it, me growing up, it was rare seeing a homosexual person. Yeah. And honestly, I grew up in a time where it's like it was totally shunned, totally outcast, totally taboo, doesn't talked about. And now we're driving down the side of the road. You see flags, you see artwork, you see, even commercials and stuff that's geared towards.
There's even clubs in schools.
Yeah.
There's even clubs in schools.
So I'd say this topic of fluid sexuality, homosexuality, same-sex attraction, all this stuff is not new. Yeah, it has been.
That's true.
This is you said, man, when it comes to you raising your upbringing, you didn't really see it. I saw it, but I remember the culture. It was like a pendulum swing. Like it was something like, there's some to me highlight moments where I was like, oh, there's the door opened when it comes to more and more just fluidity when it comes to sexuality, but. Just looking throughout the history and looking throughout the ages, especially in the age of America, I'm like, this has been actually, when you read stuff up in the 60s and the 50s and in the 70s, 80s, when you look at West Coast stuff, it's, we've been here and whatnot. And now it's super open now. Yeah. And I think when it comes to, first and foremost, where the church is and when it comes to what's our stance, is that first and foremost, y'all, we can't be so fearful of homosexuality. Yeah. Or when your kid comes up, or when someone comes up and says, hey, I'm same-sex I have same-sex attraction. I think, man, the very thing that we've done for years is to feed this fear thing of homosexuality, because in all honesty, the church, we don't understand it, so we fear it, and we exalt this sin way higher than any other sin. Yeah. And so we have this thing of even this inward belief of, I would rather have my kid be super lustful, sleeping with whether he's a guy sleeping with girls, than him being homosexual. I'd rather have my girl, she's my daughter, she's sleeping around, but if she has a same-sex attraction, oh my goodness, I've seen parents full of tears,
kids getting kicked out of houses, kids being thrown out, kids not being beaten, kids being excommunicated, versus if they're just having sex with someone, then that's not such a big deal. But we have escalated same-sex attraction to be the unpardonable sin.
Yeah, and if I can put it to you like this, I don't think there's any difference. Like if I'm a parent and my child comes to me and says, "Hey, mom, hey, dad, like I'm struggling with the same-sex attraction," or like I find out that they have like a boyfriend or girlfriend at school or whatever's happening, and like I just berate them and I kick them out the house, right? Like especially in African American culture, you know, like I think it's really big there where we're just gonna like, I mean, just throw them underneath the carpet and just trash them. It's like there's no different than that than what they did, I think, in Great Britain. I think it was in World War II. Right, is that they would do shock therapy. Right? If someone was gay, is that they would literally shock them, you know, and try to like electrocute it out of them, you know. It was some form of harm or punishment done for the sake of them being gay. And like we are not saying that we agree with that lifestyle. We're not saying that that lifestyle is right or whatever, but we're saying that that is the wrong way to deal with it.
Well, because we have to come to an understanding that we were saying before we started this, lust is lust. You know, sex is treated with the same type of like flee it, run from lust, run from sex outside of the right context, you know. And I think that the reason why we have exalted the sin of homosexuality or, you know, however all of the different types of, you know, sexualities that there are out there that people say that there are nowadays is the reason why we've exalted that is because we actually we believe a false narrative about men and women. We believe that men are supposed to be these alpha, football-loving, truck-driving, you know, Wrangler jean wearing men, you know, of grit, so that whenever there is a man that is more, you know, I hate using the term effeminate, but a man, you know, so instead of using that term, I'll say whenever you have a man that is more creative or more into music, more into the arts, more into different things, doesn't really care about football or whatever, you know, that we've got people who automatically start questioning whether or not that man is actually a man. Or you have a girl who's more into sports, or she's more into, you know, she's not buying the Barbie dolls. She's not doing the makeup. She's not buying the pretty pink dresses or whatever.
She's more of a tomboy. She
we assign masculinity to that person instead of just going, this woman or this young man or this young woman is different. And not even different. It's just they express themselves in a different way. And I think that that's one of the issues is that in the church, we address those types of things as something being wrong with someone instead of kind of seeing the complexity of a human being, the complexity of even God's character and God's nature within someone.
And man, there was even, I remember years ago in the youth ministry, there was a student a young man who was dealing with homosexuality, and where it started at, and Sam, I think you actually had the conversation with him. Is where it started at is that he began comparing himself to his dad and his brother. And even to I think maybe other guys at school, and he started to think like, man, like I don't like the same things that my dad likes. You know, I'm not manly like my dad is. His dad was kind of a macho man type dude or whatever, and too expected his son to be that way.
So I think there's a lot of things when it comes to
a lot of
variables when it comes to this. I think ultimately though, sexuality is just another. The linking point of sexuality is identity. And so we have twisted sexuality because we have a twisted identity. And so when it comes to identity, this the real reason of why we're trying to be fluid, it's because we're trying to find us. We're just trying to find us. And so when it comes to maybe I feel this or whatever this, it's really because like you're saying, okay, for that one kid in particular, it was comparison, which comparison is, we always talk about it, is the thief of joy. Comparison is the thief of identity. When you start to compare yourself and why you're not this or why they're this and why you're not this and that, you can actually create, like, because of the self-hatred that you end up having, you can start to have a twisted attraction. Now, here's the thing. There's like, and this is just one case. That's one case. There is a lot of variables when it comes to why somebody is same sex attracted, why someone feels the way they feel, and so here's the thing. As the church, again, I think when it comes to the church, we've got to look ourselves in the mirror and we've got to look at Scripture with the right lens.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because man, I have had so many talks when it comes to kids, but also when it comes to parents, when it comes to even like I remember I was talking to this. I didn't know this dude, but we just started talking, and his whole idea of homosexuality was linked to, well, that's an abomination to the Lord. Right. As like we're like, wait a minute, hold up, we acting like sin, like there's levels of sin.
Yeah. And it's like this thing. It's like God hates your gossip more.
Yes.
Than that person's homosexuality, because your gossip is driving division, which is what God says that I hate the most.
Yeah. And so literally, we, like I said, the way we view sin and the way we view like, we've got to change this thing. The Lord is way, first and foremost, he ain't scared of any form of sin, whether it be homosexuality, whatever,
gender dysphoria,
as well as so we've got to recognize when the Lord is like, he ain't freaking out.
Well, we've got to stop treating levels of sin. It's like, well, this is going to be more challenging for the blood of Jesus. Like this is going to be more challenging for the resurrection.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, no, it's all the same. All sin was defeated at Calvary.
Yeah.
All sin was defeated in the empty grave.
So those struggling when it comes to same-sex attraction, there's a lot of, like, again, confusion when it comes to this because again, here's the message of our culture. Here's the message of our generation. If you feel it, you are it.
Yes.
If you feel it, then that is you. Then if you feel it, then that's actually who you really are.
Yeah.
And so if you're fighting against who you really are, you will always be miserable. And so that's the message of our culture.
Yeah.
And so when it comes to same-sex attraction, so that's why you talk with a kid who's just they're not just feeling with these emotions, they're full of depression, they're full of anxiety. There's a lot of things that go with this. And they always think that it's all linked because of this thing, because they're not really them.
Or also this piece where it's like they feel we talked a little bit last time about repression, but they feel like the church or God is repressing them from being able to feel what they actually are meant to feel.
Right, yeah. But that's because I think this is my opinion, you know. I think that's because they're taught to repress their personality to begin with. So it's like, again, going back to the example of the young man who, I mean, I'll talk about myself. I've never struggled with homosexuality, but I'm also not a stereotypical man by any stretch. You know, like, I have a truck, different things like that, but I am very sensitive. I am very emotional. I am like, I love art. I love music.
You don't like sports.
I'm not a big fan of, you know, like last month, whenever the Super Bowl was happening, I was like, great. I was preaching that Sunday morning and I didn't even say anything about the Super Bowl because like it's the farthest thing from my mind. And then as soon as somebody said, let's go watch the Super Bowl, I was like, cool, commercials. Like, you know, like it's just not my thing. Yeah. So you take someone like me and or another young man that's more emotional, more artsy, stuff like that, and you put them in a world where automatically someone's head starts to go tilt because it's like, well, you should repress that side of yourself and you should be more manly. Then automatically we start to roll into, well, if I'm not manly, then who am I? Does that mean that do I even like women? Do I like men? Like stuff like that. So you create, who I am. Yeah. So you create questions that wouldn't have necessarily been there had we had a more full view of the way that God is. You know, you even get into women and men, you see God within women and men. And different facets and different sides of who he is, and the emotional side of God and the feeling side of God and the creative side of God and the warrior side of God and the like handling business, throw down with the Joker side of God, you know, like we see all of that. And to me, like one of the things that I was thinking is like gender is not a social construct. It's the way that the gender should be is a social construct, you know, but whenever we look biblically, you've got a guy like David, you know, David was a man's man, But that dude was so emotional. He was so creative. He was so artsy. You weren't able to pin him down just on one side or another, like he was this full spectrum of a man, but we live in a Western culture where it's like, we've got this, we got vanilla and nothing else in our mindset for men, and I think that that's one of the most terrifying things. And that's whenever we get into, well, of course, we're going to start having questions about sexuality because we've suppressed what a man is to this one thing.
Yeah. And it's really and it's Western culture. It's like, because if you go in the Middle East or you go South America, you go somewhere else, you have more emotional men. You'll have men who can relate their emotions, right? They can relate their feelings. They can express themselves, right? But in reality, if you come to the Western culture, it all comes from, the root of it is knowing, going back to the identity part, and then knowing how much we're loved. The root of it is knowing who I am. Who I am, not only in to my parents, but in the Father's eyes. And that I'm like when it comes to the example with the young boy, I'm accepted by the Father when it comes to if I'm not that manly man, if I'm not this, I'm not that, I'm accepted by the Father for who I am. The Father loves me. He delights in me, right? I haven't done one thing, and he says, man, I love you so much just for who you are. You know what I mean? And it's understanding how the Father sees us and how that's what breaks off the comparison. I don't have to compare myself anymore. And so this all comes from, but the reason why back to the root of the issue is as dads in the Western culture, right? It's when I look at my son, if he's not doing this, then there's an issue. There's a problem. And so now then we try to,
instead of embracing him, I'm
and so now on the son's perspective, now it's wow. Now I feel this rejection. Now throughout life, now I'm living with the fear of rejection and everything else, and now I'm looking for who I am. And now
now this community accepts me. This community says that I'm a part of who they are. This community says,
I think, and so here's one thing that we got to be okay with is that, again, we can feel things. Like we can, if you feel temptation, that does not mean that's who you are. And so sometimes, in all honesty, and this is where a lot of Christians who struggle with same-sex attraction, who identify themselves as gay, that they just live off of, because we kind of, in the church, we say, well, if the Lord can set you free and you'll never feel that again. And it's wait a minute, you can. You can feel here's the thing. Once I got married and I'm with one woman for the rest of my life, guess what?
Still gonna struggle.
Them other girls still look good. It's there. Attraction is true. There. That doesn't mean that I'm not married or anything. It's just okay. That's attraction. Attraction does not mean I am it though. And so here's the reality that when it comes to if someone comes up to whether it be a son or daughter, come up to a parent and they say, hey, I'm struggling when it comes to attraction, it's okay to say, all right, validate, okay, you're feeling this.
And it's this thing where it's those so whenever I have a student come up and tell me hey, I'm struggling with sexual attraction, or maybe I find out that they something's happened at school or they have some type of sexual encounter, whenever I talk with them, one of the first things I say to them is hey, listen, I validate that what you're feeling is real. I validate that you're legitimately attracted to the same sex, that you legitimately have this sexual attraction to them. Whereas it's we don't even want to talk about that or bring that up. And it's no, you're legit feeling that way, because it's so is that scientifically we know that no one is born gay.
No.
But it's I do somewhere along the lines that you made a decision to be attracted to the same sex, and that's not
started to lean into that feeling.
Lean into maybe it's a better thing. So it's not I woke up one morning and said, today I'm going to be gay. Even though now it's I'm going to experiment. I think it's a big thing, but it's this piece though where it's man, I made these micro decisions along the way in my heart that put a leaning in me to go in that direction. You know, and because now I did that, now like I'm experiencing like legit feelings. I'm experiencing legit emotions. You know, I'm experiencing legit rushes. You know, that I'm a guy and that guy touches me, and man, like that rush of emotions hits me. You know, like for some still like that is like real. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's like, you know, and so it's like gently walking somebody in that process and not berating them or beating them or, you know, because a lot of times like those, like they're confused, you know, like, and they want freedom. You're like,
and adding trauma to confusion never works.
Oh, so good.
You know, I mean, I think that that's one of those big things that parents have to realize, like traumatizing you're not going to fear your child, like plant fear in we talked about it with sex last week. Planting fear inside of their heart, it's not going to help. I mean, I've just never seen
Shame
it
and fear
work.
don't work.
Shame and fear, they don't work. We have to start treating young people with these same-sex attractions the way that Jesus treated the woman that was caught in adultery. You know, of sitting there and like, you know, my encouragement to a parent, let's say that you have a child that's coming and addressing you, or you are maybe an uncle or a cousin, or, you know, you're somebody who someone has come to you and said like, hey, look, I'm dealing with same-sex attraction. I'm a man and I'm attracted to a man. I'm a woman and I'm attracted to a woman, or I'm dealing with pansexuality, bisexuality. You know, there's so much of it now. It's like we've got to be like Jesus, look at ourselves and say, do I really have a right to throw a stone? Do I really have a right to come in and hurl an insult, hurl shame, hurl condemnation at this person? Or can I look at my own life and go, I might not struggle with that sin, but I struggle with sin. And how would I want to be walked out of this thing? How would I want to be treated? How would I want to be addressed? You know, and start addressing people from that side of things. Like, I think one of the things, because really, you know, we have treated homosexuality with such brutality in the church.
And that's why you kind of see the way they are now.
Oh yeah, everything that the church does, the culture becomes. So like the hatred that we see from the LGBTQ community, from all of these different places, they're hurling back at us what we've hurled at them for years. You know, so this whole thing is like, oh, they're so violent. They're just so after us. And like, okay, we did it first.
We did it. Let's call it a spade a spade.
Like, call a spade a spade. We did it to them first. We did it wrong. And now we need to come back to our roots of Galatians 6. When a brother or a sister is caught in sin, you who are spiritual, it's not that you yell at them. It's not that you browbeat them. It's not that you shame them out of their sin. It's you who are spiritual, restore such a one in a spirit of gentleness.
It's gentleness.
Like, it's gentleness.
It's the goodness of God that leads men to shift the way they think. That's repentance.
Well, you said last week, and I think there's something here, is like, our sexuality is one of the most fragile parts about who we are. It is such a vulnerable space. So to understand when a child or a friend or someone that we're mentoring or someone that we're family members with, that when they come to us and they're saying, hey, I'm struggling with this, it's fragile.
Oh my God.
And if you already think that it's going to be hard to put it back together, imagine if you hit it with a baseball bat. You know, it's like we've got to address these things with care and with finesse and love. And like we said last week, like, if you don't understand it, if you don't know what's going on,
get education.
Walk the line with your child. Walk the line with that person. Don't say, I may not understand. I might not deal with this. But look, we're gonna walk this thing out. You know,
I'm with you in this process.
And it's and I think it's in that moment. You know, it's giving identity. It's restoring identity to your son and your daughter. You know, man, I remember hearing a story about a young man who was cross-dressing, and he didn't have his father in his life, and but every summer he would come and he would stay with his grandparents all summer. You know, kind of every summer he would come. It just seemed like it would just get more and more and more and more. He would get more flamboyant, and just whatever, and he would just it would just go to like another extreme every summer.
Ramp up every summer.
Yeah, and so they brought him in for counseling. What actually happened is that the counselors addressed the grandparents.
Wow.
And what they found out is that what the granddad was trying to do is that he was trying to impose his masculinity, right, and what he thought would make his son more manly. Let's go watch this football game today. Let's go
chop wood.
Or whatever. And what the counselor did is say, hey, listen, I suggest that you begin taking an interest in what he likes to do, right? Yeah. And the boy loved to go to gardens or whatever. And so the granddad, he started doing what his son or what his grandson liked to do, whether that was go to gardens or go to theaters or whatever. And slowly but surely identity got put into this young man, and he stopped cross-dressing. The flamboyancy began to wane and stuff like that.
I think what the key is there is that instead of going in and saying, when someone comes and says, hey, I'm struggling with this, instead of saying, well, you're not gay, maybe start with saying, you're loved.
Yeah,
you're accepted. What you were saying. I care for you. Either way, I care for you, and I will walk this thing out with you. And so instead of here's who you're not, starting with here's who you are.
And I think it's so key, and it's it's so crucial, right? Is that some people have this come to Jesus moment, where it's in an instant they're delivered and they're changed. Yep. And and they don't deal with feelings. It's man, but dude, there are thousands of people where that is not their story.
Thousands.
And millions. For them, honestly, it can be super disheartening to hear the story of a person who is delivered right away, right? Because they are earnestly seeking change. And actually, this is where a lot of gay theology comes into play, is that they say, man, well, I prayed and I prayed and I prayed, and Jesus hasn't taken it away, and so Jesus is okay with me being
And so here's the thing, because a lot of times we focus, especially when we have somebody who comes to us who's saying, I'm same-sex attraction, I'm gay, I'm lesbian, yada. We immediately try to throw the gospel of straightness at them. We try to get them, well, you're not this, you can da-da-da, you can be attracted to this person, da-da-da. And we try, and so literally, and I've seen it when it comes to someone who's same-sex attracted, who's in this lifestyle, is that they try it at first, and they try to see, well, maybe I can be attracted to this person, and it's nah, I can't, da-da-da, because they focused on just, again, that. Yeah,
the focus wasn't on Jesus.
It wasn't on Jesus.
It was on being straight.
It was being on being heterosexual.
So good.
And so the reality is actually, we need to walk together so we can meet Jesus together.
Yeah, man.
And so when we get to that, when we do that, the goal is not for them to stop having the feelings. The goal is actually for them to actually know him. And to see his worth, to deny what they feel, which is the gospel.
Come on. Yeah.
It's to deny ourselves, to pick up our cross, to follow him. And so here's the reality, just like Josh was saying, it's hey, there's a lot of folks that say I was same-sex attraction. The Lord actually, I got to know Jesus. I deliver. I don't feel this anymore. And then there are many that say, no, I feel it every single day, but he's worth it. And so I deny myself.
Well, I think that's what I was having a conversation with a guy who had just come out of the closet, I don't know, maybe it was a year and a half ago, 2 years ago. And we were sitting there in my truck, which this guy had, no idea, why, that I would accept him and love him and say, he knew that I knew that he was gay. And I was like, bro, let's go get a cup of coffee, right? Which was, number one, it's let's go get a cup of coffee. You're not deplorable, It's no, man, come on.
Yeah,
man.
Come in close.
And
it's your homosexuality isn't contagious, and that's why I feel the church.
Oh my God,
it's not a disease, y'all.
Yes. It's where it's I can't be around a gay guy because dude, I remember there's a dude who used to come to the school of ministry here who was, you could definitely tell he was struggling, and he would go to touch certain guys, and they'd be don't touch, it was just a shoulder tap or whatever, and they'd be oh man, if he touches me, well then I'm gonna be
So I just want to say something, and probably this is mean, but I just need to say it. It's that means your masculinity is fragile. That's what that means. Yeah. If you're just get away from me, stuff your masculinity is fragile. A real man can sit there and go no, bro, come on. let's go talk. And so I'm having this conversation, and that was one of those things that I was mindfully doing in my conversation with this guy. Is like, I'm not afraid to like have a conversation with you, put my hand on you, all this stuff. So we're talking about everything. He's like, man, I've tried to pray the gay away. I've tried to do this. I've tried. And I was like, look, man, it's not an issue of praying it away. It's like every other sin. Your mind has to be renewed. Because what's going on here is there is this identity thing. There's something in you that believes that you're not acceptable to God, and so you need to go and be acceptable to somebody else. You believe that there's something about you that's not okay, and so what you actually need to do is be renewed to the fact that I am loved, I am seen, I am accepted, not for my sin, but in spite of my sin, in spite of all of this stuff. And so from that place, I can be renewed to, I'm loved. And so, of course, I don't want to do something that's opposite of God's intention, because that's one of the main things that we've got to talk about with the conversation of sexuality, is it's like God wants you to be happy. And he knows that living in his original intent is the path to happiness. Yes, so like one of the things about homosexuality is that you're not going to be able to live in one of the first and foremost, most beautiful commands that God has given us, which is fill the earth, multiply, like to be able to reproduce yourself inside of someone that you have created in your own image and having children and being able to sexually reproduce. That's a path to happiness. That's a path to meaning and fulfillment in this life, And so to be able to say like, hey, your homosexuality, like, it's, you might be happy for a moment, but there's always I've seen it over and over and over again with people who have been, either redeemed out of homosexuality, whatever. They come to this point where it's like, ultimately, I am not happy. Yeah. I have been upset for all these years, and first they'll try blaming the church, and then they'll try blaming this person, they'll try and blaming that person. But I've seen it happen a number of times now where it's like, actually at the end of the day, I thought homosexuality was going to be my source, and really Jesus is the only source that fulfills. Jesus is the only source that makes me whole. Jesus is the only source that's going to carry me through. And so now it's time to turn that thing around. And maybe it's not going to be this thing where I just like, where this person falls in love with women or falls in love with men, falls in love with the opposite sex, but that they fall in love with Jesus and they allow their fulfillment to come from him more than anything else.
Yeah, man. So like, and I think my encouragement would be to any Gen Z or really anybody who is struggling in the area of homosexuality, is to number one, like look at Jesus. Like fall in love with Jesus, like, and number two is to like just like every single day turn your feelings, turn your emotions, turn your heart over to Jesus and say, Jesus, I give you my emotions. Jesus, I give you my sexuality. Jesus, I give you my feelings, God. Like transform them, like make them yours or whatever. And like, so there's this verse in Galatians 5:16. It says, so I say, let the Holy Spirit guide your lives. Then you won't be doing what your sinful nature craves. The sinful nature wants to do evil, which is just the opposite of what the Holy Spirit wants. Listen to this. The Spirit gives us desires that are opposite of what the sinful nature desires. And man, so even for me, like in my life, I know that there were like some moments in college where it's like there were moments of confusion, and that's because some stuff that happened to me when I was young, and like I went and got counseling. Hey, listen, go and get counseling because like the variables are huge,
Yeah, that's good.
But like this is what I did, every day. As I said, Jesus, like I give you my emotions, I give you my feelings, man, I give you my heart, God. I mean, God, like I give you like what I'm feeling right now in Jesus, like Holy Spirit, like I need you to create your desires in me, because like I just feel so confused on the inside of me right now. You know what I mean? And man, like just talk about like just those, it wasn't like an overnight shift, but talk about those micro changes that happen. Day after day after day after day after day, to where you look back on things and like, I don't know, man, like it just like just the complete shift and the complete change. It's incredible.
The goal is always going to be Jesus. Before anything else, it's not to be or it's not even to remove the feelings. It's not even, it's him.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, that is the cause, and that's the delight, and that's the why when it comes to resisting. And that's where the power is, because when you actually really want him and know him and desire a relationship with him, the cross that we are to bear and to deny ourselves and to pick up actually is more worth it. And so, yeah.
So good.
That's powerful.
That's good stuff, man. That's a wrap on this week, man. Thank you guys so much for tuning in, and we will see you next week for part 3 of This Generation. We love you guys.
Thanks for joining us for tonight's episode of This Generation. Looking for more content like this? You can head on over to our YouTube channel anytime to find more of This Generation, as well as so much more content like it. Go ahead and subscribe so you'll be notified anytime we upload a new episode. Now, before we end tonight's broadcast, I just want to remind you that shows like This Generation are only possible because of your generous giving. Here at CL, we are not only reaching people locally in Fayetteville, North Carolina, but shows like Masterclass, Prayercast, or CL Talks have been able to reach people all over the world. Because of your giving, we are able to continue creating shows like this that are available for anyone, anywhere to view at any time. So thank you, CL, for being such a generous church. You can give easily by going to the CL app and clicking the Give button on the bottom of your screen. From there, you'll be taken to another screen where you can easily type in the amount you would like to give. You can also go to mycl.church/give anytime to see the many ways you can give online. There is so much happening here at CL, and we want to make sure that you are staying connected with us. The best way to do so is to download the CL app. There you can find events, messages, and watch even more shows like This Generation. We would love to see you at the prayer room this week. Prayer room is open throughout the week on campus in the Building C Arc, and we would love to see you there. Our hope here at Covenant Love is to continue to grow deeper in daily relationship with God, and we truly have been encountering Him each week in the prayer room, so we would love to see you there. Well, family, that's it for this episode of This Generation. We'll see you next time.